For those of you who may not know, Sylvia writes her own songs. Sonia writes her own songs, which gives you a little peek into her heart and soul. Thank you, sweetheart. My name is Dave, and alas, I'm an alcoholic. I wouldn't have it any other way. This is going to be just a little session on how to love people, and how to, just as importantly, how to let them love you. You know, I think most of us in AA believe that it is better to give than to receive, and we believe that through our experience. I didn't believe it when I was a kid, I'll guarantee you, but in order for that to work, somebody has to receive. So when it's your turn to receive, do it gracefully. And just say thank you. So we're going to start this thing. It's called, they changed the title a little bit, but the title doesn't matter that much. But it's called The Gift of, what the heck is it?
Gift of loving each other.
The Gift of Loving Each Other. So, we have been doing this thing for a long, long time, and we only do it when people ask us to do. So, we don't sell anything. You know, we don't promote anything. And when somebody calls and says, "Will you do it at our conference?" we just say yes and go do it. And it's a lot of fun being at the conferences that we get to go to. And I wish this sneeze would hurry up and come on. I'm afraid I'm going to blow my nose off. So, anyway, there's a lot of things to say, but one of the first things to say, if I ever get to the right page, there it is. Okay. While attending a marriage counseling weekend, Frank and his wife, Ann, listened to the retreat leader declare, "It is essential that husbands and wives know the things that are important to each other." And he then addressed the men, and he said, "Can you describe your wife's favorite flower?" And he looked at her and he said, It's gold medal all-purpose, isn't it?" So, thus began Frank's life of celibacy. We found a thing, and we kind of tucked it in here, and it is, it's a thing about men and women, the differences between men and women. One of the things we really try to stress are the hard differences between men and women, okay? And it extends way beyond plumbing and clothing. And this section of it is called "Men Are Like Waffles and Women Are Like Spaghetti." Some of you have heard this. It's picked up a lot of traction now, so maybe some of you have heard it somewhere before. But it's not that men waffle on all decisions and are generally unstable, although that's possibly true too. But what we mean is that men process their lives in boxes. And a waffle is a perfect metaphor for boxes, a collection of boxes. And they're all separated by walls. And in being separate from each other, they make convenient holding places for all kinds of stuff. And this is typically how a man processes his life. He divides it up into boxes or compartments, and each compartment or box or waffle square has room for only one idea or one thought, and that's all, just one. And the first issue of of a man's life goes into the first box, and the second issue into the second box, and so forth. And when the guy's at work, he's just at work. That's all he's doing. When he's fishing, he's not contemplating manifest destiny. He's just fishing. And that's why he looks like he is in a trance often, and why he can ignore everything going on around him. Social scientists call this compartmentalizing, and that is putting the way you see your life as a collection of compartments or boxes. So as a result of this, men are problem solvers by nature. Okay, they just enter a box, they size up what's going on in there, they determine what the problem is, and they formulate a solution. Because there's only one thing in the box, and the thing that's in the box is a problem. So got to solve the problem. So in their careers, they consider what it will take to be successful and focus on that. In communication, they look for the bottom line and go straight for it. How many times have you seen men or heard men say, "What's the bottom line?" So in decision making, they look for an approach they can buy into, and they spend most of the time in boxes in which they can succeed. And so there's such a strong motivation for a man to do that he will seek out the boxes that work, and will ignore the boxes that confuse him or make him uncertain. So for a man whose career holds the possibility of success, will spend more and more time at work at the expense of other priorities. If he feels like he's successful at work, that's where he'll be most of the time. And you can speculate all you want to about how this makes workaholics. May or may not, I don't know, but it seems like it's a little suspicious at least. And so, on the other hand, a man who always falls short at work or feels like he never meets the expectations placed on him may find out he's pretty good at just being lazy. So every chance he gets, he will then develop a habit of just being lazy. I'll just hang out here, lay down, take a nap, read a book, watch TV. Because he knows he can do that the same every day with the same proficiency that he did it yesterday. And so it doesn't take any particular skill set, and your skills don't get rusty if you just want to be lazy. Then take a success approach to communication. If they believe they can successfully talk with their wives and reach a desirable outcome, they'll be highly motivated to communicate. If, on the other hand, the conversation seems pointless to him, or he finds understanding his wife impossible, he loses his motivation to talk and clams up. That is why men come up with such profound things to say as, "Is there any point in this conversation? Is this conversation leading anywhere? Can you just get to the point? Can you just get to the bottom line?" And these are statements that a man makes out of frustration because he doesn't know how to make conversation with his wife work. And a big part of that little problem is simply that men and women are different. They think differently. They act differently. Their priorities are different. And see, knowing that, it gives us a whole new perspective. The success drive is why men find it easy to develop hobbies that consume their time. You know, if a man finds something he's good at and makes him feel good about himself and about his life, then he tends to spend a lot of time doing that because he feels good about it. Because men tend to be good with mechanical and spatial activities, they get emotionally attached to building and fixing and chasing things. And no, I'm not talking about chasing that. I'm talking about chasing things like rabbits and deer, and in other words, hunting. And he can turn a yard into an expression of his personality. And I've seen lots of men do this. I'm sure you have too, because, your lawnmower makes predictable moves and gives predictable results and feedback, and same with the computer. He knows what he'll get back from his computer, and he spends more and more time with his keyboard while he spends less and less time face-to-face with his wife. Because they have different priorities, they have different ways of looking at life, they have different ways of expressing feelings. Well, first of all, they can express feelings. But they just feel best about themselves when they're solving problems. So therefore, they spend most of their time in the left hemisphere of their brain doing what they are best at: logical, spatial, mechanical solutions to problems. And attempt to just ignore the things that cause them to feel deficient. Just can't do that. So I won't try. So in contrast to a men's waffle-like approach, women process life more like a plate of pasta. If you look at a bowl or a plate of spaghetti, you'll notice there's lots of individual noodles. All touch one another. They all seem to be headed in a different direction. If you attempted to follow one noodle around on the plate, you would intersect a lot of other noodles. You might even switch to another noodle seamlessly. And this is how women tend to face life. Every thought and issue is connected to every other thought and issue. Life is much more of a process for women rather than a series of events. For women, life doesn't seem to be a collection of boxes. It is a plate of spaghetti where everything potentially is connected to everything. So that's why women are typically better at multitasking than men. A woman can simultaneously talk on a phone, prepare a meal, make a shopping list, work on the agenda for tomorrow's business meeting, give instructions to her children as they are going out to play, and close the door with her foot without skipping a beat. It's routine stuff for women. I know it is. I see it all the time. So, because all her thoughts and emotions and convictions are connected, she is able to process more information and keep track of more activities. That's just true. It just is. As a result, most women are in pursuit of connecting life together. They solve problems from a much different perspective than men. For women to quickly solve a problem when the issues involved in the discussion are disconnected from each other is an act of denial. And so women consistently sense the need to talk things through in conversation. She can link together the logical, emotional, relational, and spiritual aspects of the issue. The links come to her naturally, so the conversation is effortless for her. She is able to connect all the issues together. The answer to the question at hand percolates to the surface and is easily accepted. Now, having this description of men, and even though humorous, there's still a lot of truth in this as far as I'm concerned. This often creates a significant amount of stress within a relationship. Because while she's making all the connections, he's frantically jumping from box to box trying to keep up with the conversation. Where the hell is this going? The man's eyes are rolling back in his head while a tidal wave of information is swallowing him up. When she is done, she feels much better, and he is overwhelmed. Joan gets home and says, "Hi, honey, how was your day?" "I had a good day today. We just committed to a new educational wing at the university, and I've been asked to oversee the budget. I am so excited they didn't rule me out because I'm a woman. Women have been fighting for a place in society for decades, and it's good to see so much progress being made. I think it's neat that you treat the women who work for you with so much respect." Our daughter is so lucky to have you for a dad. Did you remember that Susie has a soccer game tonight? I think it is important we are there because the Johnsons are going to be there, and I really want you to meet them. Susie and Bethany are getting to be good friends, and I think we should get to know her parents as well. As John is exploring the conversation, Dan is getting lost. He has no idea what the budget at the university has to do with their daughter's soccer game and their need to have a friendship with a Johnson. He admires her ability to collect seemingly unrelated thoughts, but he just can't seem to figure out how she does it. One of the things that creates havoc in a male-female interaction is the fact that most men have boxes in their waffle that have no thoughts or words. This, gentlemen, is what really drops women to the floor. They cannot imagine a mind that is totally devoid of a thought or an idea or an action, just blank. Okay? And it's routine for guys. You know, I mean, we just go there and park for a while. We don't have to think about anything or any of that. So men have boxes in their waffle that have no thoughts or words. There are thoughts in these boxes about the past, their work, and pleasant experiences, but these thoughts do not turn into words. A man is able to be quite happy in these wordless boxes because the memories he carries in them have significant meaning to him. The problem is that he cannot communicate these experiences to others, so his wife may feel left out. Not all wordless boxes have thoughts, however. They are actually boxes in the average man's waffle that contain no words and no thoughts. These boxes are just as blank as a white sheet of paper. They are empty. And to relieve stress in his life, he will park in these boxes to relax. Amazingly, his wife always seems to notice when he is in park. She observes his blank look and the relaxed posture he has taken on the sofa, and she assumes this is a good time to talk since he's so relaxed. So she invariably asks, "What are you thinking, sweetheart?" He immediately panics because he knows if he tells the truth, she's going to think he's lying. See, that's what I'm telling you guys. Women cannot imagine a head that has nothing going on in it. So, if he says nothing, she thinks he's hiding something and is afraid to talk about it. She becomes instantly curious, no kidding, and mildly suspicious. Not wanting to disappoint his wife, his eyes start darting back and forth, hoping to find some box in close proximity that has words in it. If he finds a box of words, he will engage his wife in conversation, and both will feel good about the relationship. If he is slow in finding words, her suspicion fails to be extinguished, and he feels a sense of failure. He desperately wants to explain to his wife that he sometimes just goes blank. Nothing is wrong, nothing is in denial, and nothing is being hidden. This is the way he has been his whole life. Moreover, women tend to be loud. They talk loud, they love loud, they live loud. 5 of them together can talk at the same time, usually loud, and no one gets lost or loses the thread of the conversation. Is that not true? See that all the time. They must have genetically enhanced hearing because not one of them misses a word or a nuance even. So these blank boxes have an interesting side effect that often gets in the way of meaningful conversation. In the middle of a conversation, a man will periodically be moving from one box to another, and in between 2 boxes of words or ideas, he passes through one of these blank boxes. Right in the middle of the conversation, he goes silent. He knows he should have something to say, but he's blank. He knows it is awkward to go blank in the middle of a thought, but no amount of effort has ever made it go away. It is an embarrassment he must live with and hope his wife can adapt to it. So, The differences are not limited to conversation, however. As our lives roll along, it becomes increasingly obvious to us that God made men and women different in many ways. They think differently, they process emotions differently, they make decisions differently, and they learn differently. And yet men and women complement one another so beautifully that a healthy relationship makes both partners more complete. When my son Michael was just a little baby, his first Christmas, his grandmother gave him a $5 bill for Christmas in his Christmas card. And so my then wife told me later on, if you'll just give me that $5, I'll put it in a savings account that his grandmother opened for him. And I said, well, no, I'm going to put it in the credit union account that they opened for him. She said, well, no, Mother gave it to him, so we ought to put it in the account she opened. And I said, look, but they don't pay as much interest. She says, that doesn't have anything to do with anything. I said, what do you mean it doesn't have anything to do with anything? If I say, here's a hand that's got $5 in it, here's a hand that's got $10 in it, which one do you want? She says, that doesn't have anything to do with it. And she was serious. So, I'm not sure that would ever occur to a guy. We're just too left-brained, You put it where you're going to get the most interest. I mean, even a demented moron knows that. So, that is the story of spaghetti and waffles. And now the girl will process her information.
I forgot to bring my book down. My name is Polly Pitzel, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi, everybody. Dave and I, we kind of were talking when we were coming up here, and kind of said, well, we were talking and says, well, this is kind of like sharing your loving gift and kind of like family recovery. And so what we thought we'd do is just do a little bit of sharing a little differently today and kind of start off with, what it was like and, how we grew up. And Dave and I grew up entirely different. I mean, as far as our beginnings, it's entirely different. And I always love to hear Linda talk because Linda comes from parents who loved her. Now, my parents did not have a lot of money. In fact, my dad only had a 9th grade education. But there was one thing that my parents gave me, and that was a lot of love. And they gave me a lot of sacrifice. And I was an only child. And even though my parents did not have a lot of money, if I wanted something, and I loved that about it, I was used to getting stuff that I wanted. And if I wanted something, they would go to great lengths to get that for me. And of course, I was a child, and I didn't appreciate what they did. For a long, long time, I had no idea. A lot of times my mother worked. Now, I'm 74 years old, so women, when I was a little girl, very few mothers worked. That was just not what happened. They stayed home. Dad worked and he brought home the money, and mother stayed home. But that wasn't my household. My mother worked. My mother was a nurse. My mother was the one who was educated. And so I felt different because of that. Because when I was a little girl, I had to go, to this lady to take care of me for child care and stuff like that. And then as I got a little bit older, in fact very young, maybe 9 years old, then I finally talked my parents into, I don't want to go to that babysitter anymore. I don't like to go there. Other kids didn't go there. And I wanted to come home. So I became a latchkey kid before it was even popular. That's what I did. I went home, but all of this made me feel different. Now, my perception, I love Clancy when he talks about that alcoholism is a disease of perception. And my perception is so different today. And my perception is different today because of a program called Alcoholics Anonymous. But what happened is I didn't have any idea how loved and cherished I was as a child until I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I married young. So here I come from this family who their whole desire, and today I look back and I wish I could have been just 100th of the parent that my parents were, because I wasn't. But they loved me, and they were willing to, wherever they went, except when they were working, they took me. And they worked hard. They gave me dancing lessons and gymnastic lessons. And now, did they interact really well with each other? Not necessarily, because both of my parents were abused children, severely abused children. And what they did, they were like an Al-Anon and an alcoholic. They found each other. And what happened was they had totally different reactions to that. And one of them, my dad was really angry, and my mother was just all closed in. And what would happen is I'd see my dad, and he would get really angry, and he would scream, and he'd yell, and he'd kind of cuss at and he would cuss at my mother. So this was the kind of action that I saw in my house. And what that created in me is it just made me furious at my mother. Stand up for yourself. Why do you let him do that? And I just would have those kind of reactions. And so as far as seeing a marriage and how people acted, I didn't really get any of that growing up. I would go over to my girlfriends' houses and I would see, different things at their house than I saw at my house. And what I know today is that probably, that most of the people I hear talking Alcoholics Anonymous and most of the people I hear who are not alcoholic had all kinds of different things going on in their families as they were growing up. Today I know that most of it has to do with my perception of reality and how I saw things at that time. Well, lo and behold, I come out of this household of there was nothing that other than my parents, they had these actions, my dad's anger and my mother not, being closed into herself. But as far as showing and sacrificing and telling me that they loved me, they did. And if my mother couldn't afford a dress to buy me, or if she could, and they definitely couldn't afford all the dancing costumes and the stuff I had, my mother, who worked, would sit up all night long making me dance costumes and other clothes. That's what she did. And all I would do is yell and say, I don't want you to make me clothes. I want to go buy clothes like everybody else buys clothes. And and I didn't see the love. I didn't see the love. And one of the things that I got to know, and I met Marcy when I was like brand new sober. And I used to run down to Whitney. I got sober in Dallas, and I used to get Aura Balance by her and Barbara Donovan all the time. And then I was all into this woo-woo stuff, and I loved it. And so, but Marcy had a whole lot to do with changing my perception. And it's not necessarily that she knew about my background, but she used to talk about the blessing. And she would say that people get the blessing. And what happens is many of us And I didn't get it till I came to AA, even though I had had it. I didn't see it. But what happened is she would talk about the blessing. And so many of us come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's when we get the blessing. Maybe we had these tragic childhoods. Dave had a tragic childhood, have these tragic childhoods. But what happens is we come into Alcoholics Anonymous and we get the blessing. And the blessing is that we are loved. We are loved. We come into Alcoholics Anonymous and we are loved. But then, as she said, some of us have always had the blessing. And I was a person who always had the blessing, but I didn't know it until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, because I was so steeped in self. Now, I don't believe that it was just because I was an only child. Although, you know, the thing, only children are spoiled and all of that, and certainly I didn't have to share with anybody, that was for sure. I had my parents all to myself. I don't know that if I was born an alcoholic, I don't know. All I know about is from my various early beginning, all I can see is that all I ever thought about was me. All I ever thought about was me. Well, what I know today is that if you take that type of selfish and self-centeredness into a relationship, that relationship is not going to work. Because relationships are about give and take. The other big word is relationships are about compromise. And I didn't know anything about compromise. I knew a lot about pitching a fit till I got what I wanted. And, you know, my daddy was so, I loved when Murph was talking about her dad. That was my dad. My dad, if I would have stood out there and screamed and said, I want that big yellow moon out there, my daddy would have tried to find a way to give it to me. That's how much he loved me. And today I know that that love was there. I just had to come into Alcoholics Anonymous and get all the stuff moved away so that it could come out, so that the love could come out. So that's my little take on the childhood stuff, and I'm going to give Dave that. Then we'll do a little bitty rendition on our marriages, and then we'll tell you what the solution was.
I was born into a family of extreme, well, I really don't know what kind of family I was born into, because my father left. This is my mother's version of it, so it's the only version I have. So as far as I know, this is what happened. Is it true or not? I have no idea. But what she told me all the time was that, my father left when I was 3 months old, and his parting words were, I don't care if the kid starves to death. Now, I don't know why she would tell me that. I mean, I don't think I would tell my child that if that's what had happened. But, people just had different ideas back then. If you want to know pretty much what it was like, there's some books out. One of the best that I know of is a book by Ann Miller. I'm sorry, not Ann Miller. Alice Miller, yes, Alice. And in that book, she explains about the mind of a child, what kind of memories you are likely to retain, what your ability is to store memories, what your mentation capacity is. When you're young, and when you're that young. And she goes on to explain how monsters like Hitler can be made from just an ordinary child. If you go about it in the right way, you can make another Hitler if you want one. And so I came up through, Alice Miller thinks it was mostly a the German culture that had this. I don't know if that's true or not either, but that's what she thought. And it was things like children should be seen and not heard. You never interrupt an adult when they're talking. You never interrupt anybody when they're talking. That was really frowned upon. And to this day, that bothers the hell out of me. That makes me crazy when I'm having a conversation with somebody and somebody else walks up and just interrupts. Because they don't, my view of that is they don't come up and join the conversation in progress. They come up and take it wherever they want it to go. And, my brain automatically says, that is so rude as to be almost unbelievable. But that is the kind of upbringing I had. Very strict. My parents were martinets. Just about anything was a good excuse for corporal punishment. I got spanked with the belt often. And somewhere along the way, I, like many other people I've known, was taught to say, well, I deserved it. Nobody deserves to be beat with a damn leather belt. What kind of craziness is that? That didn't seem crazy to me at the time. I deserved it. I was a bad boy. So, I was not the poster child for mental health, or for any of that stuff. And I, the kind of upbringing that I got was just, I didn't realize there was anything at all unusual about my upbringing. I thought everybody was treated like me. How many times have you heard that in AA? I hear it over and over and over again. It was being said when I got here, and it is still being said today. And so, I grew up thinking it was normal for parents not to be very interested in my life. But they were very interested in my manners, and now I look back and see, well, what I think may have been going on, although I can't make a judgment on it because it's been too long ago and too many memories have faded, and I don't try, because what's the point? But I just think that maybe their concern was that they would look bad if I produced the misperception that I was a bad boy and was not being properly raised. I remember going over to with my mother to see her mother, my grandmother. All I ever recall my grandmother ever saying was, "You boys go outside and play so your mother and I can talk." It was never, "Hi, how's my boy?" None of that stuff. Just go outside, get the hell out of here, so your mother and I can talk. And and I don't talk about this kind of stuff very much because I don't feel like I don't feel on balance. I feel like my life has been fabulous, okay? I've been in Alcoholics Anonymous for a long time, and all those old ideas are pretty much gone. I've been given an absolutely blue ribbon wife who dearly loves me, and so I can't dwell on all that stuff anymore. But I can see how my life was, how the wheels were knocked off my little choo-choo, and I didn't find them and get them back on for a long time. So, there was that thing with Marcy White, I still have her CD. It was decorated, and a little booklet was produced by somebody of hers. You might have one. CD and a little booklet, and it's just a,
Oh, Ellen Cassidy, she said it. That's probably right.
oh, Ellen Cassidy did it, yeah. And it was just a very nice little remembrance of Marcy, and it was a CD of her talk where she talked a lot about the blessing, and there was a nice little booklet that went with it that was just really neat. And I still have that. I still know where it is in my house. That's been 2001. And I still know where it is, and I still listen to it occasionally. Because it just helps me to understand, and although I now understand, I want to be able to help other people understand also. So I just listen to it now and then to stay refreshed on it. And I had a brother, and he and I were never close. My mother got married again. I had a stepfather. He didn't seem to have any trouble containing his enthusiasm for me. And my brother didn't either. And my mother always told us that we were both loved equally by the Father. And one day I was talking to my brother, and we were talking about things we remember from our childhood. And he said, you know, one thing I always felt really bad about, and that was how Dad treated me so much better than he treated you. That wasn't my memory. My mother told me we were equally loved. So, you know, you can't always believe what this guy comes up with. You know, your head is liable to peel out anything. Is it true or not? You're not ever going to know. You're just not. So what you do about that is up to you. I just try to dismiss it to the best I can, but I can't do it completely. It's there. You know, all I can do is deal with it the best I can. And AA has taught me a way to deal with it that is better than I ever imagined anything would teach me to do that. And so things are not always what they seem, and I you know, maybe, I mean, so if my problems were my parents' faults, if it were their problem, if my problems were their fault, what good does knowing that do me now? What do you want me to do with that? I mean, I think as far as I know, there was only one Lazarus, so, you know, that got raised from the dead, so what do you want me to do with it? Get by it, you know. Get around it. Don't waste a lot of time on it. Just look around you. Do you see anybody that loves you when you look around you? When you first come in, you may not think you do, but they're there. People who will love you and be so happy you're in their life. They will find you, and you will find them if you need each other. We find each other. And you know, I have a lot more love in my life than I ever earned, which is, you know, I didn't come out of my childhood with a great respect and admiration for God. I was kind of indifferent to it, you know. My women didn't smoke when I was a little boy. So I would listen to my mother talk about how bad smoking was, and as soon as we got home, she'd light a cigarette. You know, I would get my little hiney spanked if I used bad language, but I would hear my mother and my father, my stepfather, I hear both of them use bad language all the time, tell dirty jokes, whatever. And so, you know, when you're a little kid, you don't know how to deal with this stuff. You know, you don't ask why, because you're going to get told more than likely. It's none of your business. And I don't know what to do with all this. So I do what everybody does. I just stuff it and try to figure it out, and that doesn't work, so I just let it go. The hell with it. And I just don't know how to process it until much later in my life, until I've let it affect me to the point that now I have an enormous amount of work to do to somehow deal with all the stuff that happened. But that's what AA is for. You know, I mean, the first thing we try to do is deal with it with many of us with alcohol and drugs. Well, that works great for a while. I mean, fabulous. Alcohol and drugs worked great for me for a long time. And I don't know what all the fuss was, you know, from my wife and all that. What are you talking about? So that's if you have problems like that, let me tell you, you're in the right place, because those are our specialty, stuff like that. You know, we'll get you off the sauce, and we have a program that has 12 steps in it that is just really dead on for dealing with those kind of problems. And we will be happy to take whatever amount of time you need to help you with them.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to just, one of the things, kind of I'm going to just talk a minute because it's 3 o'clock and we're going to quit at 4. And we're going to try to fire through the traditions a little bit. Let's do it. One of the things what we're trying to point here is that Dave and I had no idea how to have a relationship when we got together. I was a military wife, and my husband was a SAC pilot, and he was gone for years at a time, and we played all kinds of games. I was in charge when he was gone, and then I wasn't when he came back. I mean, all of this stuff. And I'm Dave's 4th wife. So, as Carol loves to tell Dave, and Dave, you're the only common thread in all of those marriages. And so, Dave and I did not have any idea how to really have a relationship. We just didn't know how to do it. And so what happened is that I had an AA sponsor who married an Asian woman. He was a priest, and he left the priesthood when his mom died, and he married this woman. And I loved the relationship that Frank and Hiroko had. I just loved how much he loved her and all of this stuff that was going on. I wanted that kind of relationship. And when I look back, and after, you know, all of these years, I had that. My husband loved me, but there was no way to love somebody that was as sick as me. So when Dave and I got together, I had 3 years of sobriety, and he had 4 years of sobriety. I'm here to tell you, I look back on that, I don't know how we made it yet. Because we were, you know, we just were not prepared for marriage. But what happened is just like so many people have, is we had a lot of people in our lives that were willing to help us. And my first AA sponsor, he was willing to help us. And I am also a member of Al-Anon, and I used to go to Woman down in Brownwood. And I would go down there, and many times I would share a room with Sally. And her and Albert, they had a marriage that I thought was beautiful. And Sally would open up her, and I wasn't in Al-Anon then, but I knew Sally, and we'd room together because we kind of knew each other from AA and Al-Anon meetings. And in Texas, which is way different than most anywhere I've ever been, is AA and Al-Anon just really do meetings and everything together, and we always did that. And so I'd end up rooming with Sally, and she'd open up her suitcase, and she'd have all these love letters in it. And she'd been married to Albert a long time, and I wanted that kind of marriage. I wanted to have that kind of marriage. I wanted that kind of romance. And then Dave and I had been married about, I don't know, maybe 10 years. think it was about 10 years, because it was just when we started being invited to speak, 10 or 11 years. We ran into Dick and Peggy out of Omaha. And Dick and Peggy were talking about working the traditions in their relationship. And one afternoon, they had done a really short little thing on the traditions, and I said, I just want you to, tell us about it. So we sat down one afternoon, and Dick and Peggy took us through these traditions in relationships. And I'm just telling you, it was magical. It was just absolutely magical. And what happened is Dave and I went home, and we said, we've got to practice working the traditions in our relationship. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch off into the traditions, and if you want to add anything about your marriages, I'm not going to talk much about mine. I'm just going to launch off, okay? Okay.
Okay, anybody got a match so you can light the fuse?
So what happened is, so I'm going to kind of talk about this, and the wording is just a little bit different than the traditions, but what happens is that in AA, at least we did in Southern California, they would say the steps are to the traditions are to the group as the steps are to the individual. And Dave and I were a group. And I knew about the traditions. I mean, both of us, we ran around with David Aronofsky all over Dallas, listening to the traditions. So we knew about the traditions. But they gave us a twist on it that really changed our lives. And Dave and I, still to this day, look at the traditions, and we had a lot of fun talking about it. We had a 6.5-hour drive, so we had a lot of fun talking about it coming down here. Our common welfare should come first. A healthy relationship depends upon unity. One of the things is that Dave and I, what is the first tradition, what is the most important thing in our group, is that we need to have unity. We're there for a common purpose. And Dave and I are in this relationship because we want to be in this relationship. We love each other, and the number one thing is to be unified. That we are going to be, now different people do different things. Some people have, his bank account and her bank account and our bank account and business bank accounts and different things like that. Well, Dave and I are pretty simple because, first of all, we don't have a business, and the other thing is we just have one bank account. And when we were working, and now the Social Security checks, but when we were working, all the checks went into one bank account. And that's just kind of the way we have always done it. We've had one bank account, and we try our best to be unified. Now, do we sit down and have a discussion and always agree? No. But there's one thing that we totally agree on, and that is that I love what Keith Lewis used to say, is that we believe in the covenant of our marriage, and that we are unified on that. And we want to do everything we can in order to preserve that, to preserve the unity of our marriage. Okay, I'm going to give it to you.
Okay, tradition 2 says, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as He may express Himself in our group conscience. Each of us is God's trusted servant, neither governs. And so we have come to feel like He is the one authority in our lives, and that we have to step aside and allow Him to do what He does best, which is guide His children. That seems like so much more reasonable a thing to do as let a couple of bozo alcoholics try to run their own lives. Doing the very best we could to have a beautiful, wonderful life, we turned us into a pair of alcoholics. That's our best shot. It's as good as I can do without somebody helping me. And who am I going to turn to? I'm going to turn to you? Well, hell, you're an Alcoholics Anonymous too. It seems to me if you could manage any life well, you'd manage your own. And if the best you can do is wind up in Alcoholics Anonymous, that's not a lot of incentive for me to see. And the thing is that I overlooked the fact that most of you could do a better job managing my life than I did. Okay, but your big stumbling block is going to do what you tell me to do. It's not too likely I'm going to do that. I mean, that's just not the way I ever approached life. So, it has been a very long process for me to get from the point where I was at, spiritually and with respect to a higher power, to where I am now. That was a tough process for me. It was a long process, a tough process. I had one outstanding characteristic before my life took a turn and started back up again, and that was I was a very capable people pleaser. You know, I mean, I knew from my childhood that nobody wanted to have anything to do with me. You know, that when I am at my very, very best, I am barely acceptable. So, you know, I mean, I'm about a half a bubble off plum anyway. So, you know, so I did a lot of stuff in my earlier years in AA just because you thought it was a good idea for me to do it. So I did. Because you're all I had. The people in AA was all I had. When I got here, a therapist at the county mental health clinic was all I had. But now I had you, and that was and you were loving and kind, and I'm not going to take a chance on losing you guys. Are you kidding? Please. So I'll do what you tell me to do, or at least I will act like I have done what you told me to do. So, having a loving God was not something I really needed. That's kind of strange to me because after 4 days of going to AA meetings and you telling me the same thing every time I went, because I went to all of those drinking, and you told me that, you know, we don't have enough power individually or collectively to get you sober or keep you sober. So we strongly recommend you do what all of us did, and that is go ask whatever power that you think is greater than you, and don't tell us there's not anything or anybody, because you surely are not. I mean, you're not the brightest star in the heavens, but you surely can't believe that there is nobody in the universe or nothing in the universe that has more power than you do. So go home and turn to whoever you think or whatever you think is more powerful than you. And it turned out in my case, it was God. I didn't know who else to choose. You know, I used to sponsor a guy that said his higher power was a giant hamster. And I told him he has to get a different one or a different sponsor. So you got to get a different higher power, a different sponsor. I'm not going to play that kind of game with you. But nevertheless, I went home on the evening of April the 17th of 1976 and told God if I was going to get sober, I just walked in and said, I'm going to do it. If it doesn't work, it's not my fault, it's their fault. I did what they told me and it didn't work. So don't blame me. So I walked in that night after an AA meeting, and I just told God I was going to quit drinking. He was going to have to help me because there sure as hell ain't no way I can do it by myself. I have got to have help or I just can't do it. And I knew that to be true. And the next day is my sobriety date. I got up the next morning and went to an AA meeting. I haven't had a drink since I said that. Well, I drank the rest of the evening of the 17th of April. I mean, we're going, aren't we? I mean, we. But I got up Sunday morning. I didn't have a drink that Sunday and haven't had a drink since. And the enormity of that miracle did not hit me for a long time. You know, I mean, when your brain is as befogged by alcohol as mine was, you know, memories are not crisp. But it took a long time before I realized exactly what had happened. Overnight. So we just we went from there. So I got to know when it's a miracle from God, because I can think of no other power in the universe other than the God I prayed to that could or would do that for me. I was a derelict. I was just a derelict at the time I said that prayer. So whenever you're told something and you don't think it's true, you think somebody in AA is giving you a sunshine enema, just give it a try. You know, give it a try. Let's just go to 3.
David, I have these checklists, and we have these checklists and all this kind of stuff, and so anyway, we're trying to get through this like quicker. And the basic requirement for a good relationship is a mutual desire to make it work. Now, one of the things that I have found in life, and especially in Alcoholics Anonymous, there are many reasons why people stay in relationships other than a desire to make it work. One of the things that I'm working with a woman right now, and she absolutely, her desire to be in the relationship was because the man had a lot of money. And that it's absolutely, she just sold her soul to this relationship, and today, I think today he's being served with divorce papers, and she just couldn't go on anymore in that relationship. That was I was listening to people, how we talk about when things happen to us, we just swallow them down, and we swallow them down. The Al-Anons were talking about that earlier today. And my AA sponsor, Dottie, used to say, whatever goes down's got to come up. And what happens is eventually those resentments fester, and something's got to happen before, you know, it's going to explode. So financial feelings of financial security. That's why a lot of people stay in a relationship. The need for emotional security by having a mate. I mean, one of the things I've learned about sponsoring women is that, you know, they need a man in their life. And a lot of times they'll just settle for someone. We'd rather have somebody than somebody, you know, is not have anybody and wait for somebody who's really the right one. Feeling trapped due to responsibilities, such as having children. How am I going to support these kids? I got, you know, all sorts of reasons why people are in relationships other than a mutual desire to make it work. Dave and I, when we fell in love, and I'm telling you, there's love in the air right now. I've got people in my life, I got women in my life, plus my son, who are in love. And there's nothing in the world like those first years of being in love. Don't miss it. If you're, you know, it's like, I love watching it. I love watching people in love. I mean, I can remember Dave and I were so in love that we'd be going somewhere and we were, you know, in the car kind of rubbing up against each other, and we'd have to stop at a motel. We couldn't even get there. We had to stop. I mean, there is nothing like it. And so it's fabulous, just, you know, to want to be in the relationship. Now, that intensity is no longer there. But I can tell you, the desire to be here is there, that desire to be in this relationship. And I am so grateful that we've had help along the way, because people have helped us keep the fire alive and keep the love alive. And as the years go and you age, it changes. It's different today. But the deal is, it's still there and it's still alive, and we still have the desire to be here and to make it work. I should have brought my book. I forgot my book upstairs.
Yeah, see? Okay, each of us should be autonomous except in matters affecting the other person, our family, or society as a whole. I can tell you, Polly and I don't do very much that affects society as a whole. There aren't many doors there to open. But you know, the thing is, nobody is going to live their life devoted to making you happy. They're not going to do it. That is a transparent fool's errand. So each partner should be autonomous, except in matters affecting each other. And other members of your family, you know, your parents or your children. So, and another way to say this is you have to become unselfish and unafraid. I understand, I've never had this particular fear, but I understand there are people that are, that you know, they become afraid because they think if their partner is getting too much attention, they're afraid somebody's going to come along and whiz them right out from under them. You know, it's going to take them. I have never had to be afraid of that, because Polly has never lied to me, and that's never been one of her ace cards. So, and her existence is not to attend to my wants and my needs. So, you know, I have to think in terms of how does this affect us, rather than how does this affect me. So, my fondest wish for Polly is that she be the very best Polly she can be, whatever that means to her. So, you know, I just try to keep it from ever being something that she has to ask me, is it okay if I do this? Okay, that we have a good enough relationship so that she won't have to ask, she'll know. And she does. What's more threatening to a relationship than to tighten your grip or try to tighten your grip? You become scared and you sense the other people is beginning to slowly edge off into the sunset. The worst possible thing you can do that'll make them go from a slow creep to a dead run is just try to grab hold and hold on tighter. I mean, that'll do it. And you better let go quick or they'll drag you with them. So this has to do with also with being an autonomous person, you know, and autonomy just means you're self-governing, and it means to realize that we are God's kids. You know, we're not just someone's child or mother or father or aunt or uncle or something. We're God's kids, and when we ask God what He would like for us to do, one day at a time, and then go about trying to do that, we don't endanger our relationship, or we don't endanger anything. So we talked a lot about unity, and we asked God to treat us as a unit, as two halves of one whole. We asked God to show us how to stay together, to support and encourage our love for each other, and to help us behave as He would want us to. So You know, there used to be a little thing in AA that I heard. I don't know if it gained nationwide status or not. Some things do, but it said, you know, if you love someone very, very much, let them go free. And if they come back of their own free will, they're yours forever. And if they don't, hunt them down and kill them. We rarely assess the good in ourselves, but you know, we know things. We're not insensitive. You know, if you got somebody in your life that that tells you they love you and they don't act like they love you, guess what? They don't love you. You know, and if you got another person that is a little has sharp corners and rough edges, you think, well, I'll just go ahead and marry this person anyway. You know, I can straighten all this up after we get married. No, you can't. Don't be silly. You're not going to straighten it up. You know, that's a condition that person doesn't even know about. And on top of that, if he needed somebody to straighten him up, would he come to you? Maybe not. So it's also true that, we're going to find what we look for. You know, if you're looking for roses, that's one thing. But if you're looking for thorns, you'll find a rose bush and you will notice every thorn on it. And you won't see a rose. I mean, you find what you look for, and you just overlook what you're not looking for. So, I can see, I believe there's a right and a wrong for me, but I don't believe I know what right and wrong is for you. So I have to be very careful. I have to not judge you at all. I don't know what your motives are. I mean, I can't judge you. And on top of that, I believe what the other big book says. Don't be judging people. You don't know all the facts. You don't know nothing. If they need to be judged, I'll take care of that. Don't worry about it. I got this covered. And so it's just, the negative practice of judgment means that what you're saying to someone is there is a right way and a wrong way, and I am better at differentiating between the two than you are. So I am going to tell you which one is the best. And it's my right, if not my duty, to assess the way you drive and talk and think and believe and appear, all it is just my ego trying to protect itself. Just make sure that it's thought more of than you are. It doesn't work. I mean, all it does is make you look worse. But we're lured into that trap time after time after time. Ego is in there screaming and yelling, Here's what we got to do. It doesn't care about you. My ego doesn't care about me. It cares about itself. That's my sense of it. Do I know exactly where my ego is? Yeah, it's in there somewhere. But that's as close as I can pin it down. But it's there. And every morning I say the third step prayer. God, I offer myself to you. So from that point on, for that day, I belong to God. And what God does with His kids is none of my business. And so, on top of that, nobody likes a whiner, You know what whining is? That's anger being pushed through a little tiny hole.
Okay, tradition. Whoops, the microphone. Okay, tradition 4. Dave dropped his knife. Sorry about this, guys. Maybe I lost it. Okay. Each of us should be autonomous except in matters affecting the other, our family, our society. Oh, you did that one. Sorry about that.
Get your own.
Get my own. Tradition 5. A relationship has but one primary purpose, to love each other and serve as an expression of God's love. My primary purpose as a married person is to behave like a married, sober woman. And one of the things that I like to do is, it's not a big deal anymore today. I mean, I'm old, okay? But, I used to go off and talk and stuff like that, and I was younger and cuter. And sometimes I look back at those pictures and wonder, where did she go? But the deal is that how I behave is a reflection. That's my primary purpose. When I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I wasn't in a program of attraction. And because I was, it depended, of course, on what your attraction was, but I was having affairs with other men and Alcoholics Anonymous. I was doing things that are very unbecoming and certainly not very spiritual for a person who's supposed to be in a program about God behaving. And today it's really important to me how I act. I love being married. I love being married to Dave. I want to be a program of attraction. I want people to want to be married. These are the things that I want. And so I want to be somebody who is an attraction. I want to do the things that God wants me to do, and I want to be faithful and true to my husband, and I want you to know that I am faithful and true to my husband. Tradition 6.
Tradition 6 is pretty straightforward. It just says, we ought never single-handedly endorse, finance, or lend our name to any outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, or prestige divert us from our commitment to each other. This can be, if money is a problem and you're going around loaning a lot of it out to your brother-in-law or your friends, you're going to have trouble in your relationship. Single-handedly endorse, finance, or lend our name to any outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, or prestige divert us from our commitment to each other. This can be, if money is a problem and you're going around loaning a lot of it out to your brother-in-law or your friends, you're going to have trouble in your relationship. Guaranteed. So, because I don't think I need to be overly supportive spiritually or emotionally or physically to our relationship, because I'm not going to work harder on Polly's program than Polly does. It's a waste of my time and it annoys Polly. So I need the assurance that my well-being is between me and God. And then when it gets right down to it, my sobriety and my well-being, my relationship with God does not depend on anybody else, on another person. There is no human alive that does not ultimately have feet of clay. Chuck used to say that all the time. Don't hang your sobriety on me. I have feet of clay. I'll let you down. I won't mean to, but I inevitably will. So, in our relationship, each person is personally responsible for themselves. I don't know when Polly ought to call her sponsor. I don't know when she ought to go to a meeting. That's between her and God. 7.
Tradition 7. Tradition 7 is that we need to be self-supporting through our own contribution. Each of us microphone, sorry. Each of us ought to strive to be fully self-supporting, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. And Dave and I try to do that. Now, in our particular relationship, and this is not always in everybody's relationship, but in our particular relationship, we have both been equally financially supportive to our relationship. it's been really crazy through the years of our marriage. Right now neither one of us work, but when we were working, it seemed like, we started out and we moved to Michigan, and I didn't have a job, so Dave was, he was the worker, and then I finally found a job, and then along about 1993, Dave lost his job, and then I became the person who was, the one working, who had the support, but it's always been pretty financially, earning-wise, we've earned nearly the same thing. So that's been in our life. That's not in all lives. That's not what happens in all marriages. Spiritually, Dave and I both there's lots of things that we do as far as our spiritual program together. Dave and I pray together a lot. We love to pray together. Now, I had this great idea that when we retired, that we were going to have, our quiet time and all that was going to be together when we retired, and we were going to get up in the mornings and we were going to read, and then we would meditate together and all this kind of stuff. Well, our lives are pretty much the same. During our working life, I left to go to work before Dave ever got up. And then a lot of, that's kind of continued. Now we retired. For some reason, I still can't sleep late. I'm up at the crack of dawn. And, when we first started, I was going to wait for him. Well, my day's half over by the time he gets up. So now our spiritual stuff is pretty a little different. He meditates a little differently than I meditate. But we're responsible for our spiritual condition. We know that if we don't have God at the center of our relationship, we don't have a relationship. And one of the things we do when we pray, like at meals or when we pray together, is we just are so grateful to God for our relationship and the willingness we've had to be able to do the things that we need to do in our relationship. And I think it's pretty darn good that two alcoholics are hooked up. And in October, we celebrated 34 years of marriage. I think that's pretty darn good. I'm really grateful for that. And neither one of us knew how to have a relationship. We both knew how to take a hostage, but neither one of us knew how to have a relationship. So and not only that, we like being married and we like being there. The other is that I need to be self-supporting emotionally. And Dave talked about the spaghetti and waffles. And I'm here to tell you that when we ended up going to therapy when we were I think we were 9 years sober, had been married about 6 years or somewhere in there. And my whole thing was, you're not emotionally available to me. That was my little tune. I don't know if any of you ladies have, any other women in here have sang that tune. You're not emotionally available to me. Well, you know what I have finally learned about the traditions. I've learned about marriage, and because Dave and I really want to have a good relationship, we've looked into it. Men and women are different. And I wanted Dave to be emotionally available to me. He doesn't have that many emotions. I mean, that's just who he is. He just doesn't have that many emotions. And what I've learned to do is I talk to another woman. I talk to somebody else about all that stuff. And Dave would just look at me with this blank look, and he was just dancing all around, trying to do everything he could to try to fix me. And then all I wanted him to do was just listen, like my girlfriend listens. And so what happens are, like, my sponsor listens and gives me some direction. And poor Dave is just, I'm his wife. He's desperately trying to make me happy. And so I have learned that there are just certain things that Dave can't give me emotionally. And thank God, I put such a strain on him. He was totally responsible for me in every way. And what I had to do is I had to get a higher power, and it can't be Dave. And physically, one of the things that, it's my responsibility to go to the gym. It's my responsibility to take care of myself. If I need to go to the doctor, it's my responsibility to do that. Dave does not need to sit around and worry about me whether I'm taking care of myself or not. That's my responsibility, and it's his responsibility. And both of us are responsible. I mean, these are the things that we learn in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm responsible for me. And what we try to do is to be self-supporting in this relationship so that we take care of each other, of ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves, so we bring into this relationship as whole a person as we can. And another thing that is basically that I need to do for me spiritually is I need to work a strong AA program. And both of us have sponsors, and both of us sponsor. And Dave is not my sponsor. And that is not what we do in this relationship. Do we talk about stuff? Of course we do. But what I have to have a sponsor. I'm a person that has to have a sponsor, and I work with a sponsor, and I'm really grateful. I've had a new sponsor since May, and it's wonderful, and it's getting better and better, and we're going to go do a weekend together, and and so that you just learn, to be closer together. It's just beautiful. And these are the things that I need to do for me, and Dave needs to do the same things for him.
Our relationship should remain forever an unprofessional, free and giving relationship, each to the other and to any of God's kids that come or are sent our way. Individual contributions to our lives and to our happiness and all are just free and from the heart. If we need any kind of professional help, then I would just start with my sponsor, and if he thinks that's a good idea, I'd probably go get it. But it's been my experience that it is difficult to find a professional that knows anything about alcoholism and Alcoholics Anonymous. We don't need any deep dish psychotherapy to speak of that I know of. I don't feel like I do, and so it's and when it comes to chores, we try to share. One of my daughters told me that I took out the trash wrong, and I said, well, okay, how should it be done? She says, well, when I ask you if you'll take out the trash, you should get up and do it. Don't say, wait a minute, wait till the commercial comes on, wait. If I could wait, I wouldn't bother with you. I'd do it myself. But, and when you take it out, look in the can that the bag came out of. If it's dirty, wash it out. And when you bring it back in the house, put an empty bag back in it. So, so I found out that, that a chore like taking out the garbage, to a man is just that, a yucky chore. But to a woman, it can be an act of love. So, if we look at ourselves carefully, we have to see that neither of us is a certified expert on alcoholism or the 12 steps or sex or marriage or medicine or child psychology or spirituality or humility. I don't know when Polly's supposed to call her sponsor. Talk to your sponsor. Find out when she wants to hear from you. And I don't think God uses me as a pipeline to her. I've never heard anybody whisper in my ear, "Hey, Dave, here's what I want you to get Polly to do." Never heard that before. So, you know, the drift of this thing is that, you know, sometimes it's my responsibility, and the same chore maybe sometimes it's not this time. Just cooperate, get along, you know, work together.
Tradition 9, our relationship ought never be organized or under the control of only one partner. This has been a learning process for me as far as somebody being in control and somebody not being in control. My dad was in control, or at least he acted in control. And if things didn't go his way, he got very angry and screamed and yelled and cussed. And what my mother would do is I would watch her manipulation. And how, you know, we don't tell Daddy this, and, you know, just be nice because we don't want Daddy to have one of his fits. It was all this kind of manipulation of just not being honest and upfront. And then I go into another marriage. I marry at 18, and I go into this marriage, and I marry a military man. And what happens is that it's not so much that he dictates our life, but our life is dictated. And, you know, if the military says do it, you're going to do it. That's all there is to it. And he was gone a lot. And, you know, it would seem like he'd come home and we'd just kind of play this game that he'd be gone, and if he were gone for, you know, 6 months to a year, he did 3 tours in Vietnam, and if he went, and they weren't tours, but he wasn't on the ground till the last time, but he was gone. He was gone. He was flying B-52s. And what happened is that he was gone. And then I'm in charge. I'm the mother, I'm the father, I'm everything. And then he comes back home, and then we play this game that I'm the little subservient wife. And I mean, there was no honesty, no reality. And the thing about it is he didn't know how to do it any better than I did. That was the way he was raised. His dad was in charge. His mother never worked. And that was, you know, what happened. And at the time, I wasn't working either. I mean, I stayed at home as a military wife. Back then, very few military wives ever worked. That's not the case today, but that was the way it was then. And so there was nothing like the relationship that Dave and I have today. And what I love about the relationship that we have is that Dave and I have a partnership. We're in a partnership together, and we make decisions together. And one of the things that a lot of people have gotten a lot of laughs about, well, they didn't realize that when we moved to Birch Bay, Washington, and built a house there, I was still working in Southern California. And Dave went up there, and Dave supervised the building of our house, and he did most everything. And he would take pictures and email them to me about stuff that he was buying and stuff like that. And, I mean, he did a fabulous job. I loved what he did. And when we got ready, when we had to sell our house and we moved to Florida, what happened is that Dave bought our condo. And I never saw that condo until we moved from Birch Bay and I got there to live in it. And everybody says, how could you have let him do that? How could he, you know, I said, I can't go. My speaking schedule was such, and my commitments, I had commitments. I had things that I had to do, and I couldn't just blow them off. There was no way I could do it. And both of us felt like that, you know, what we needed to do is keep the commitments. And what happened was we had a 2-week span of where he didn't have any commitments, but I still had commitments. So he flew to Florida and bought our condo. And I'm here to tell you, I would have, you know, it was perfect. But the thing about it is, we've been married long enough, and we've been together long enough, and we've been in a partnership long enough that he knew what to do. And we had an amount of money, and we had agreed on that as our partnership. So what I believe is that we just, we stay in a partnership together. Neither one of us is in charge of this relationship. Tradition 9. Tradition 10, sorry.
Okay, I'll do either one. Which one do you want? Okay. Tradition 10, we are each entitled to our own opinion on outside issues, hence our name ought never be drawn into public controversy. That just means, we're careful about expressing our opinions. And we believe that this means that we're careful about expressing our opinions, and we just believe in a live and let live. We don't ever drag our marriage into public controversy, and because I think that heated controversy or controversy, as my English friends like to say, is usually fired by some form of fear, and it usually has some kind of power-driven anger associated with it, or resentment or emotional damage of some kind. And, next time you get into a heated argument with your mate, if you'll listen very carefully, you'll hear their mind snap shut. And so ask yourself, how likely is it that it is God's will for me to scream and yell at one of his kids? Well, not very likely. He doesn't scream and yell at me, so I got a feeling he doesn't care for it too much. And I don't want to ever have to say to God, I'm so sorry I hurt one of your children that you love so much. But sometimes I just can't or won't control myself. I don't want to ever have to stand before God and say that. Before my higher power and say that. I don't want to have to stand before my friends and say that. So we don't, I don't carry our opinion around. Polly carries hers, I carry mine. And we don't agree on everything. I mean, good grief. Our lives would have no, we'd be devoid of salt and pepper. I mean, what kind of seasoning would we have for our lives if we were just duplicate copies of each other? So diversity is good. We always try to be courteous to each other. That is the very essence of Alcoholics Anonymous, in a way. That I don't yell at her, and she rarely yells at me. Well, it's true. And, besides, a quiet, composed response will usually dampen anger, or at least not inflame it any more than it already is. So, and we don't speak ill of each other in public. Being publicly critical is, I think, we're good about that, some of us, especially when we're newer, railing away that it's somebody else's fault. It's not my fault. And so, feelings are temporary unless you state them publicly. If you state them publicly, you're giving them an authenticity and a longevity that you just don't want them to have, because in 5 minutes, my opinion's going to change. My mood is going to change. My words are going to change, or would if I spoke any. So, that's now time for 11, please.
No. I'm so sorry that I left my book so that we go. We have to go back and forth in this book around so I can tell what I'm doing here. Tradition 11, we individually convey our beliefs and philosophy through attraction rather than promotion. We're each in charge of our own anonymity. one of the things that is very difficult, and it was kind of mentioned in Tradition 10 as well, I am very uncomfortable about being around couples who argue in front of me. I don't know about any of you, but it's very uncomfortable. And I don't want to be that girl. I don't want to be arguing and saying things like that in front of other people. And I was with a couple, and we were together not too long ago, and she was just great. He was saying something, and they were disagreeing, and he said something about it, something to her, and then she looked at him and she said, "You're really funny." Just like that. I have no idea what was said when they got in private, but the way she just kind of just got it, she says, "Oh, you're really funny." So, but Dave and I try really hard not to do that. I don't even like to see people, and I'm sure I was one of those people, jerking kids around. You know, I don't like to see out in public jerking kids around and yelling at kids. And I certainly, I mean, I wonder what goes on in a home. But I was in the grocery store not too long ago, and this man was just yelling at his wife in the grocery store. I'm thinking, if you can yell at her here, what goes on when you're alone? This is just, it's scary to hear that kind of thing. And I just don't want to be that person. And to be in charge of our own anonymity. And the spirit of this tradition is that we accept another person as they are. And there was a lot this morning, the Al-Anon panel had all about acceptance. And one of the things that has happened with Dave and my personality is really different. I love people. I'm just with people. I love people. I talk too much. I'm the interrupter that he was talking about. I'm going to run up and just grab you. I'm the interrupter. And I love that. Dave is quieter. We could have a big Christmas party, and we did that when we were in California. We'd have all the people over who didn't have any place to go on Christmas or Thanksgiving. That's what we do. The next thing I'd know, I'd look around and Dave was missing. And what had happened is he just sort of eased off and went into his office to his computer. Now, I don't get that. I don't get that. And I used to have a lot of problems with that. I was busy trying to hone Dave's social skills and tell him what he needed to do when we were out socially. And finally, I'm letting him be in charge of his own anonymity instead of me being in charge of it. And what I do is just accept. Dave used to say to me, "Polly, I love you so much, I don't want to change a hair on your head. Why are you always trying to change me?" And today, I have accept Dave as he is. And once you do that, it's amazing how much you can love somebody's differences from me. And Dave and I are very different people. But I have learned to appreciate his differences. One of the things that I love, he didn't talk that much on a car ride, and now he'll tell me stories, and he loves to read about science and all that kind of stuff. And I love, now that he tells me about those things, and I can be interested. And if he were like me, which is running your mouth all the time and talking and running around, he wouldn't have time to read about that stuff. So I don't have to read about it because he tells me about it. So it's just, accepting the other person for who they are. I fell in love with him for that person. And then you get somebody and you're loving them, and then all of a sudden you want to remake them. And I see this so much with the women I sponsor. They have this is the man you fell in love with. This is who he is. And I'll have somebody that husband is working really hard. I have one who's just bought a business and he's trying to, he's bought out his partner and he's starting his business and he's working a lot. And I'm like, do you like your life? Yeah. Well, you can't have it both ways. You can't have him home all the time and live like you live too. That's not going to happen. He's working hard, and I'm sure he's doing that a lot for you. So what we learn to do is accept each other exactly as we are. And one of the things that says the spirit of this tradition is that we accept each other as they are, putting both the golden and the silver rules into practice within the relationship. The golden rule is, of course, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. The silver rule is, don't do for others what they can do for themselves. I don't need to change Dave. He's fine just the way he is. That's not my responsibility. My responsibility is just to love him the very best way I can love him. Tradition 12.
We're seconds from getting out of here. Anonymity, our selflessness, is the spiritual foundation of our way of life, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. One of the greatest gifts or privileges I think we have as members of AA is the opportunity we have to be of help to God's kids. Most of the people who come into our program are just lost. They're disoriented. They're lost. They don't have any idea how they got into the mess they're in, how they became a walking derelict. If they've gone that far, which I did, they don't know how they got that way, and they don't have the faintest idea how to get out of it. And we do. And so that is a real privilege to be able to put the wheels back on somebody's life. There's no room in our primary purpose for pride or arrogance or selfishness. We're about humility and love and forgiveness. We want to be happy, joyous, and free. Our book says we're not a glum lot, and most of the time we're not. There are pockets of enthusiasm here and there, but there are also pockets of nothing. Also, so when you get to a point where there's not much energy, give them some of yours. Put something into it. How do you treat your mate? How do you treat people you're in a relationship with? If you're not happy about that, ask yourself, what can I do to change? And if you don't know, you're surrounded by people who do, who can give you some really good ideas. Because we all had to. And so, we didn't get here knowing how to be a good partner or how to have a pristine life or we had to learn slowly and sometimes very painfully how to get straightened up. So there's a guy up in Canada named Cease, and he has a little prayer that I offer you here, and it is, God, treat me tomorrow the way I treat others today. That'll make your sphincter oscillate. So, treat me tomorrow the way I treat other people today. And just, there's just about nothing in the world that's better than a warm, loving relationship with another person. And there's nothing that's more painful when you had one of those and you lost it and it doesn't work anymore. I mean, that is a killer. So, thank you for your patience. The guy named David Aronofsky used to say, the mind can absorb only so long as the butt can endure. And I think yours is probably is about to redline on endure. So thank you for your patience. So please.
You want to point out?
Yeah.